Have you ever wondered if the people who loved you ever truly saw you, or were they only in love with what you awakened in them? We like to believe love is a meeting of two souls, raw, authentic, mutual. But what if it's not? What if love is often just the unconscious calling out to itself through the mirror of another person? Carl Jung once said, "People don't fall in love with who you are. They fall in love with the part of themselves you unknowingly represent." It sounds poetic, but it's not always beautiful. Because the moment they realize you are not their fantasy, the love they built on you collapses. And unless we understand why this happens, we'll keep confusing emotional hunger with real connection. And that confusion? It costs us years. In this video, you're about to discover something most people never do. The two real reasons why someone falls in love with you, and neither of them is what you think. But more importantly, you'll begin to see how love has always been a journey, not to someone else, but back to yourself. We're told love just happens. That one day, you lock eyes with someone across a crowded room, and something clicks. You feel it in your chest, that rush, that knowing, that almost magical pull. You say to yourself, "This must be fate." But Carl Jung would say, no, it's not fate. It's memory. Not of the mind, but of the soul. Because what feels like a spontaneous connection is often the final moment in a long sequence of invisible events. A chain reaction that started years ago, in childhood, in heartbreak, in silence. In the way your mother looked at you when you cried, or the way your father left the room when you needed him to stay. And now, you walk through life with those emotional blueprints etched inside you. Blueprints that shape who you notice, who you're drawn to, who you crave. So when someone steps into your life and fits that unconscious pattern, the pull feels magnetic. But it's not about them. It's about something ancient inside you. Recognizing itself, Jung called this the architecture of the psyche. And love, through that lens, becomes something much more mysterious and much more dangerous. You think you're falling in love with them. But in truth, you're falling into a psychological story, one you didn't even know you were still telling. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been with someone and felt like you've known them for years, even though it was only your third date? Have you ever met someone and immediately thought, "Where have you been all my life?" That's not chemistry. That's familiar pain. That's unprocessed longing, disguised as intimacy. And unless you've done the work to decode it, you'll keep mistaking that pull for love. Carl Jung warned us about this. He said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." In love, that looks like this. You keep attracting the same types of people. You fall into patterns you swore you'd never repeat. You call it bad luck. But it's not. It's your psyche, trying to complete an unfinished story. That's why love isn't random. It's highly intelligent. But not in the logical way. It's intelligent in the emotional, symbolic, mythic way, the way dreams speak. Every person who pulls you in is not just a person. They're a messenger, a mirror, a signal. And the question is not just, why did I fall in love? But rather, what was trying to heal in me when I did? So before we even look at the two profound reasons others fall in love with you, you need to understand this. Love doesn't begin with attraction. It begins with resonance. And resonance is a sign, not of who they are, but of what lives inside you. Let's return to a question we rarely ask in relationships. What exactly are we falling in love with? Is it the smile? The voice? The warmth of a glance across the room? Or could it be something else entirely? Something unseen, yet undeniably powerful? Carl Jung believed that when we fall in love, we often fall not for a person, but for a missing piece of ourselves. A part we've lost, suppressed, or never had permission to fully express. Imagine a man who's always been rational. organized, emotionally restrained. He grew up in a household where tears were weakness and vulnerability was punished. He becomes as expected, controlled, maybe even successful. But then one day, he meets someone wild, passionate, expressive, unapologetically chaotic. And he's drawn to her, magnetically. He tells himself, she's amazing. She's everything I'm not. And that is exactly the point. Because what he's feeling isn't just admiration. It's resonance. She awakens a version of himself that has been buried, a part that longs to breathe, to live, to break the rules he's built around his own emotions. That's the first reason people fall in love with you. You embody something they've unconsciously been searching for. You become the mirror, not for who they are, but for who they could be if they were whole. This is why opposites attract. Not because difference is exciting, but because difference reveals what's missing. The introvert feels alive around the extrovert. The grounded soul is drawn to the chaotic one. The overthinker melts in the presence of someone who feels more than they analyze. But there's a danger here. Because the moment someone believes you are the source of what they lack, they don't just love you, they become dependent on you. They might say, you complete me. But what they're really saying is, I don't know how to access this part of myself unless I'm with you. And that is not love. That is emotional outsourcing. That is the unconscious attempting to borrow wholeness through another person. And when life inevitably reminds them that you are human, flawed, messy, inconsistent, the illusion collapses. What once felt divine now feels disappointing. The pull turns into resentment, the chemistry fades. And they wonder, what happened to us? But nothing happened. They simply woke up from the projection. Because here's the hard truth. When someone falls in love with you because you represent their missing piece, they aren't really seeing you. They're seeing a symbol, a representation of an inner potential they haven't integrated yet. You become a character in a story they didn't know they were still telling. And once the story no longer fits, they either abandon you or blame you for not staying in character. That's why Jung warned, beware when someone puts you on a pedestal. They're not worshiping you. They're worshiping a part of themselves they haven't claimed. So what does this mean for you? It means that when someone is drawn to you deeply, you must ask, am I being loved or being projected upon? And when you are drawn to someone intensely, you must ask, is this love or is this my unconscious reaching for its missing piece? To love consciously is to recognize this dynamic, not to reject it, but to honor it and grow through it. Because in every moment of attraction lies an invitation to reclaim a forgotten part of yourself. Let's say someone falls in love with you, not casually, not slowly, but intensely, all at once. They say things like, you're everything I've ever wanted. It's like I've known you forever. I don't know why, but I feel so safe with you. To the untrained heart, this sounds like romance. But to the trained eye, to someone who understands the psyche, this is a warning sign. Because what they're describing isn't you, it's a projection, a fantasy, an unconscious image they've carried for years that your presence happens to activate. Jung called this the danger of projection. The tendency to take an internal image of the ideal lover, the ideal protector, the perfect partner, and project it onto someone else. This internal image doesn't come from nowhere. It's shaped by childhood experiences, the absent father, the nurturing mother, the emotionally unavailable caregiver. It's built from fairy tales, culture, and every silent longing that was never met. And then they meet you. And your presence, your voice, your vibe, your timing stirs something familiar. You awaken the image. In their mind, they're not saying, I like this person. They're saying, I found the one. But they haven't. They found a screen. And you, unfortunately, are it. This is the second reason people fall in love with you. You awaken an internal image, an unconscious archetype. They've carried within. Jung called these images the anima and the animus, the feminine side of a man's psyche, the masculine side of a woman's, not just personality traits, but deep emotional blueprints, loaded with memory, symbolism, and unmet needs. The anima and animus are powerful. When projected onto someone, they create the illusion of deep, fated connection. People say things like, "It feels like destiny. You complete me. We were meant to find each other." And that's the trap, because they're not seeing you. They're seeing an idea of you, a psychological construction you never agreed to play. And as time goes on, cracks appear. You forget something small. You say something human. You disappoint, like all humans eventually do. And suddenly, the spell breaks. You're no longer the savior, the muse, the soulmate. You're just you. And for them, that's not enough, because their love wasn't built on knowing you. It was built on needing you to be something you never were. This is the heartbreak of being idealized. It feels magical at first. You feel seen, chosen, even sacred. But slowly, reality seeps in, and their affection turns cold. You go from everything to too much, from perfect to complicated. And you're left wondering, what did I do wrong? But you didn't do anything wrong. You simply stopped being their fantasy. You showed up as yourself, and they didn't know how to love that. So how do we protect ourselves from this trap? We start by asking, am I being idealized or truly understood? Is this connection grounded in reality or inflated by inner longing? And when someone falls for us too quickly, too intensely, we slow down. We watch, we ask, what are they seeing in me that they might be missing in themselves? Because no one, not you, not me, can live up to an archetype forever. And love that's built on illusion will always collapse under the weight of truth. No fantasy survives reality, not for long. At some point, the person who idealized you will begin to see things they didn't expect. The way your voice trembles when you're anxious. The times you pull away when you're overwhelmed. Your inconsistencies, your contradictions, your flaws. And when that happens, the unraveling begins. They try to hold on to the illusion. But the mind resists what the heart doesn't want to feel. You're not who they imagined, and for many people, that's unbearable, because loving the projection felt safe. Loving the real you, that requires work, patience, complexity. And they didn't sign up for that. They signed up for perfection. So now the very things that once made them adore you, your mystery, your freedom, your emotional depth, suddenly become problems. You've changed. You're too much. I thought you were different. But the truth is, you didn't change. They just never really saw you in the first place. This is the danger of unconscious love. It begins as divine worship and ends in quiet resentment, because projection is not sustainable. It is by nature temporary. It's like painting a cathedral. On fog, eventually, the mist clears, and what remains is reality. And reality is not glamorous, it's raw. It's messy. It's human. And that's where love is tested. Because now the question isn't, can I stay in love with who I dreamed of? But rather, can I love the real human in front of me, with all their edges and imperfections? Most people can't, not because they're cruel, but because they never learned how. They weren't taught that love is a process. They were taught that love is a feeling, one that's easy, constant, and effortless. And when that feeling fades, they think the love is gone. But what's really gone is the fantasy. Jung understood this collapse deeply. He said that when the projection shatters, it's not a failure, it's an opportunity, because it forces you to confront not just who the other person truly is, but who we truly are. What were we projecting onto them? What inner image were we chasing? What wound were we trying to heal? And maybe more importantly, What part of myself am I still outsourcing to others, instead of integrating within? In truth, every heartbreak is a mirror. Every collapse is a classroom. When the person you loved begins to feel unfamiliar, when the connection that once felt sacred starts to crumble, you are being given a choice. Do you chase the next fantasy, or do you wake up? Do you blame them for not being your ideal, or do you take back your projections and start the journey inward? Because the only thing worse than heartbreak is repeating it, and you will, until you learn the lesson your unconscious keeps trying to teach you. Wholeness cannot be borrowed. It must be built from within. Not every love is meant to last, but every love is meant to teach, even the painful ones. Especially the painful ones. Carl Jung never saw heartbreak as failure. He saw it as transformation. A process that doesn't just hurt, it awakens. Because when you fall in love with someone, what you're really doing is meeting a part of yourself you didn't know you were ready to see. Sometimes they reflect your hidden strength. Other times, they reveal your deepest fears. Some people ignite your creativity. Others trigger your insecurity. But all of them, every single one, serve the same psychological purpose: to mirror you back to yourself. Jung called this process individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming whole. And love, in this journey, is not just an emotion. It's a mirror, a guide, a sacred disruption. Think about the people you've loved the most. Not the ones who stayed, but the ones who shook you, who left you questioning everything, who broke your heart, and somehow also opened it. They were never random. They were messengers. They arrived when your soul was ready, even if your mind was not. Jung called these encounters synchronistic events, moments that feel too meaningful to be coincidence. People who show up with perfect or painful timing and leave behind a trail of growth you never saw coming. The meeting of two personalities, Jung wrote, is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. So yes, love can devastate, but it can also rebuild. Not in the same shape, not with the same illusions, but with clarity and courage, and a deeper understanding of who you really are. Because that's the true gift of love, not in what you gain from others, but in what you recover within yourself. You see, when someone falls in love with you, they may believe they're seeing something magical in you. And they are, but the magic isn't just you. It's what you awaken inside them. You become a mirror, a turning point, a symbolic invitation to meet themselves. And the same is true in reverse. When you fall in love with someone, what you're drawn to is often not them, but the version of yourself they help you remember. That's why love, when fully understood, is not about possession. It's not about finding the one. It's about recognizing, this person has arrived to show me something vital about me. That changes everything. It takes love out of the realm of fantasy and into awakening. It transforms heartbreak from something to avoid into something to learn from. It reframes even the shortest, most chaotic relationships as part of your evolution, because the goal isn't to be loved perfectly. The goal is to be transformed truly. And sometimes, the person who breaks you open is the very person who sets you free. So now the question changes. It's no longer, how can I find someone to complete me? It becomes, how can I become so whole that love is no longer a need, but a gift? Carl Jung believed that once we understand our inner projections, once we see through the illusions of idealized love, we stop looking for someone to fill our emptiness. We start learning to fill it ourselves. Because real love, conscious love, does not begin with fantasy. It begins with self-awareness. You stop chasing partners who resemble your pain. You stop recreating the same toxic patterns and calling it chemistry. You stop falling for people who mirror your wounds. and start opening to those who mirror your growth. And when you become whole, you don't love out of need, you love out of freedom. That's the turning point. When love is no longer about rescue or validation or being seen. It's about seeing clearly yourself, the other, the pattern. The lesson. From that place, love transforms. It's no longer desperate. It's deliberate. It's not based on fantasy, it's rooted in truth. You love them, not for what they represent, not because they fill a hole inside you, but because you've met yourself so deeply that you can finally meet them for real. This is what Jung meant when he said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, because once you do, you stop projecting. You stop needing someone to carry the parts of you that you refuse to hold. You reclaim your power. You reclaim your wholeness. And love becomes a mirror, not for what you lack, but for what you've embraced. So the next time someone falls in love with you, or the next time you feel that deep magnetic pull toward another, don't just ask, is this love? Ask instead, what part of my soul is waking up right now? Because real love doesn't complete you. It awakens you. And that perhaps is the most beautiful kind of love there is. So, why do we keep falling in love with the same kinds of people? Why do we end up in different relationships? With the same emotional pattern, the same arguments, the same longing, the same heartbreak, just with a different face. Carl Jung would say, because your unconscious is still trying to teach you something you're not ready to learn. Every time you're drawn to someone who feels familiar, that familiarity might not be comfort. It might be a cycle, a loop of attraction rooted in old wounds, unhealed dynamics from childhood, stories you keep telling without knowing. You're the narrator. Let's say you're constantly drawn to emotionally unavailable people. You think it's just your type. But Jung would ask, who's the first person that made you feel unseen? Or maybe you fall for chaos, the wild ones, the unpredictable ones. But is it passion? Or are you trying to relive the emotional instability you grew up in, hoping this time it'll finally resolve? The unconscious doesn't care about comfort. It cares about completion. It wants to finish what was left undone. It wants to face what you've avoided. And so, it recreates, not to punish you, but to push you toward integration. That's why your love life is often a map of your healing journey. The people you attract aren't mistakes, they're symbols, reflections of a part of your inner world that still needs your attention. But here's the catch. If you don't become aware of the pattern, you'll stay trapped in it. You'll confuse trauma bonding for chemistry. You'll call emotional hunger love. You'll believe you're unlucky in love, when in fact, you're just unconscious in love. So the work begins here. Start asking different questions. Why do I feel pulled to this person? What part of me are they mirroring? Is this love or a repetition of something old? Because once you recognize the pattern, you break the spell. And when you break the spell, love no longer controls you. You choose it, with awareness. Carl Jung believed that awareness is the beginning of liberation. Once you become aware of your patterns, you stop blaming fate. You stop chasing illusions. You stop thinking love is something done to you, and start seeing it as something born from within you, because the unconscious only has power when you ignore it. You see, love is never just about the other person. It's about what they awaken, what they mirror, what they provoke. And when you become aware of that, everything changes. You no longer need to chase those who don't see you, because you've begun to see yourself. You no longer try to complete others, because you've begun the work of completing yourself. You no longer fall for potential, because you've learned to love people as they are, not as your unconscious wants them to be. This is conscious love. Not love that's always easy, but love that is real, grounded, free. Jung's work teaches us that healing isn't about avoiding heartbreak. It's about learning from it. Transformation doesn't come from perfect relationships. It comes from honest ones. From moments that shake you, break you, and, if you're willing, rebuild you. So instead of asking, how can I find the perfect partner? Ask, how can I meet myself so fully that I no longer need someone to be my missing piece? Because that is when love stops being a search and starts becoming an invitation, not an escape. Not a rescue, but a mirror, a catalyst, a shared fire that burns away illusion and leaves behind only what's true. And sometimes that truth begins with you. Maybe now, the next time someone falls in love with you, you won't just ask, do they love me? You'll ask, what in me have they been waiting to find in themselves? And maybe the next time you fall for someone, you'll pause and ask, what forgotten part of me is trying to wake up? Because love is never random. It's never just about them. It's always about you, your wholeness, your reflection, your return. So don't run from love, but don't chase illusions either. Instead, pay attention to what draws you, to what hurts you, to what keeps repeating. Because in every pattern, in every heartbreak, in every overwhelming connection, your soul is whispering, look here. This is where your healing begins. And if this video has stirred something in you, if you feel like you've just seen your own reflection a little more clearly, then you're already on the path, and we'll keep walking it with you. So, if you're ready to explore more truths like this, more psychology, more inner work, more moments that wake you up, subscribe to Mind Lens, not for answers, but for questions that matter, because sometimes one question is all it takes to change the way you love forever.